We're going to look at one more section, and then I'll give you a study tool at the end. Regulation of body temperature. Your skin and tegumentary system, very important. Proper temperature, important for metabolism. I don't know if you've heard lately that even like when you sleep, being too hot is not good for your metabolism. You should turn the temperature down a notch. Skin plays a huge role in temperature regulation, and the hypothalamus is the part of your brain that controls temperature regulation. Active cells, those in your heart, skeletal muscle, all active cells produce heat. We think of muscle cells probably more so. Muscle cells are going to produce a large amount of heat. And then heat can be lost to surroundings. So if I go outside and it's cold out, if it's colder than my body temperature, my body is going to lose heat to the surroundings. So your body is going to respond to lack of heat, losing heat, or excessive heat. When you have excessive heat, when you get too hot, your blood cells dilate, which means they expand, bringing them closer to your skin or surface. And when they are closer to the surface of your skin, then they can release heat. If they are constricted tight in your skin, it's really hard for that heat to be released. So when you get hot, your blood vessels expand, release heat, and you sweat. And I've said before, the reason your face gets red when you're overheated or when you're hot is because those blood vessels have dilated and they're closer to the surface of your skin, and that's why your skin has that reddish appearance. Cooling, so if I go outside and it's cold out, the opposite's going to happen. Those blood vessels are going to shrink up so that they are covered by a larger layer of skin, which is kind of like a larger blanket. It's insulating them. Inactivate the sweat glands, so my sweat glands are not going to release sweat if I'm cold. And then shivering, when you shiver, you're using muscles, and like we said, muscles produce heat. So whenever you shiver, those muscles are trying to produce heat to get your body back to a normal temperature. Too big of a deviation from normal temperature can be very dangerous either way. So hypo, below thermia, below temperature. If your body temperature gets below 95, so this would be, cold. Hypothermia, people have frozen to death. You can become extremely hypothermic and actually lose your life. Opposite, hyper, above temperature, above thermia, your body temperature over 106. And when especially younger children run fevers, that 103, 104 temperature, if they start to run a fever higher than that, that can become very dangerous. And that's more common in younger children than it is as we get older. Wounds that you have, inflammation, where blood vessels dilate, they, like I said, get closer to tissues, are going to make them look red and swollen. That's a normal response to an injury. So inflammation is one of the first things that's going to happen. Blood vessels are going to dilate, allow for more things to move through them. Superficial small cuts are going to be filled in very quickly by reproducing epithelial cells. So your skin cells reproduce very quickly. Those cuts are filled in fairly easily. A deeper injury, where you actually break a blood vessel, needs to have the formation of a clot to stop that bleeding. Blood clot and dry tissue is what actually forms the scab. Fibroblasts build fiber, are going to move to the area that you have injured, And then they're going to secrete fibers that basically kind of attach to the edges and start pulling things together. So fibroblasts, fibers start fixing things. Phagocytotic cells are going to come in and basically eat, destroy, get rid of any dead cells, injured cells, debris, possibly bacteria, things like that. Damaged tissue is eventually replaced, and then the scab eventually will slough off. Very deep cuts will end up with a scar, and that is something that involves some of the new cells. So what happens there is this: if the wound is deep, extensive production of fibers, collagenous fibers, collagen, are going to form a little elevation above it, and that's where you're going to have a scar. So instead of your normal epithelial cells, a scar has more collagen fibers that are in it. And sunlight affects collagen, which is why being in the sun can cause more discoloring to your scars. Large wounds can leave a scar. Healing may be accompanied by granulations. And what happens there is there might be a new branch of a blood vessel. One nice thing about your circulatory system, if I have a route that's cut off, it'll start a new one. So even when people have like heart surgery and things like that, if I have a blood vessel that's not working well, my blood vessel might branch a new branch to take care of things. So a new branch will grow into the area, and then that vessel is going to be accompanied by a large cluster of fibroblasts that are going to help with the repair. So here you can kind of see a diagram of what happens. You have a wound. White blood cells are very important for getting rid of bacteria infections. So from these blood cells that dilate and inflame, these white blood cells are going to come and try and get rid of any bacteria that's been there. Along with the white blood cells, these macrophages are going to come along, and anything that starts to die, so when some of these blood cells start to die, they're going to get rid of that. And then the fibroblasts are actually going to start to bind things together and make that wound smaller. And basically you can see then our blood vessel regrowth, fibroblasts are filling in, so this is getting smaller, the wound is getting smaller. Eventually my skin is going to regrow. Do notice during the healing of a wound, you're going to have a thicker area of skin for that period of time. Scab will form on the top. If the wound is not deep enough, there's not a scar, then that scab will just eventually slough off and you're left with new skin. And that is the end of chapter 6.